Good morning and welcome back to the VIP seat with your hosts Preston Holland and Jesse Naor. Sit back, buckle up, and let's take off. All right, Preston. So we have news from my hometown right now. Bond, who's been making the headlines recently, their KKR-backed company built by former JetEdge CEO Bill Paparillia. They're gearing up for a 2027 launch with some major moves this year. The company just acquired the Part 135 charter certificate from Fort Lauderdale-based National Jets, and they're setting up their global headquarters in Fort Lauderdale as well, which is awesome. And they're going to launch an aircraft management business, but it's going to be exclusively for their fractional owners, not open to the general public.
Yeah, so this is the first move by Bond. They've raised a ton of money, and it is time for us to ring the M&A gong for the first time, and I would imagine not the last time for Gong. And for those who are wondering, the sponsorship for the M&A gong is still available. Reach out to us, but we are ringing the M&A gong for you, Bill Paparillia. Congratulations. He bought the 135 operator. So one thing to note, they did not buy the FBO and the Part 145 maintenance that is associated with this group, but they bought the 135 certificate, which dates back to 1947. So this operator has been around for a long time in Fort Lauderdale. I did a little bit of research because I saw the headline and I was like, who is National Jet? Personally, I was not like, oh yeah, it's that operator that everybody knows and kind of a household name. So 1947 roots. They're in Fort Lauderdale, KFLL. They've got an FBO, a Part 145. In 2024, they announced a massive infrastructure expansion. AIN reported on that, of expanding their FBO operation, which is, they're pouring some $70 million, I think, into the redevelopment of their FBO. So really trying to be a player in the Fort Lauderdale.
20 acres at that airport, which is like unheard of.
Yeah, that's a large footprint at any airport, let alone one of the busiest airports in the country for private aviation. So that's huge. So Bond is setting up their headquarters in Fort Lauderdale. I guess it's probably not at the FBO, but who knows? I mean, keep it in the family, right? We can speculate. That is not facts, but we can all speculate. And so they bought the certificate. It's a clean certificate. It started as air ambulance, had some Learjets on it in the 1960s and 70s. And then recently, the data that I could find, they have a couple of heavies, G550, G5, G4SP, those types of aircraft. So it's got the 10 or more. It's got the international ops. It's got a lot of the basis for Bond to be able to scale out their operation with their global 8000s and 6500s and Challenger 3500s that make up the $1.7 billion Bombardier order in the next, a lot of years.
Yeah, I'm excited to see someone else coming down to Fort Lauderdale. Obviously, I'm here, so I'd love to see private aviation growing. It's also a huge hub for us down here, so I think it makes a lot of sense. I also did my own little investigation, and I thought it was interesting. This has not really been publicly announced, but I was looking through profiles. Sergei Petrasev, who started JetSmarter. I'm really sorry if I murdered that name, Sergei, my bad. But he started JetSmarter. Around 2016, they had raised $150 million. Everyone thought they were going to be a big, $1.5 billion unicorn company. That didn't come to fruition. But what's interesting is that Bill at JetEdge had signed an agreement with JetSmarter back in the day to purchase up to $500 million in charter. And then, it ended up a couple years later, JetSmarter got acquired by VistaJet. Not acquired, I think it was a stock deal. I don't think they were doing well financially. There were some lawsuits that were going on. But these two already have this relationship, and now Sergey is on the board of Bond. And I'm like, that's interesting. They all went from doing these deals a decade ago to now being on the board together. I wonder what all is going to be in store, with Sergey's input from the JetSmarter back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think the one big glaring difference here is this is fractional only. So they bought a 135 certificate, but are only doing fractional. And that's kind of been the big kind of talking point for Bond, is that this is not a charter operation. It's not aircraft management as you would imagine it previously. It's all fractional. It's fractional 2.0, if you will, super exclusive, very luxurious. Yet you're buying a 135 operation. Is there some plan to fly 135 op spec? Maybe, right? Like I think that's the big glaring question for me is, do you need a 135 certificate that's super clean, very old, with all of the international stuff if you're only going to be flying Part 91K? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think what you'll find too, generally speaking, even like the net jets and flex jets of the world, they always have a 135. And I do believe, even if you're fractional, like there's some cases, like when there's interchange or other things going on that might be under 135. So things to like keep things clean and easy. People who have 91K often also do 135 as well, just to kind of cover their bases. And look, they said they weren't going to do management. And then here we are, like, a month after announcements that they are going to do some management. Everyone has plans to do things one way, and then, making money is another.
Yeah, I also think that there's some corporates that require only flying 135. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a little bit of that, right? Hey, if you want to fly your fractional under 135 rules, you can, right? It gives max optionality. I think the timing is another thing that I think is interesting here. So here we are, January of 2026. Airplanes don't start delivering until 2027. One of the comments from the story is this is not the last acquisition that's going to happen between now and official launch. So I don't know. A couple of questions that I have. Is this a stopgap measure? Is it, hey, we're going to get operations up and rolling, we're going to kind of work out the kinks before we start the fractional model? Or is it, hey, we're just going to kind of sit on this and business as usual? The entire team's coming over from what I read in the article. So, you get all of your operations team. I don't know. I also want to know, when did Bill's non-compete run up? And how much of this is timing, convenient timing for the non-compete running up?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be curious to see.
Let's see. They sold to Vista in 2022. Here we are, a little over, maybe two-year agreement, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Bill, if you're listening, we would love to sit down with you and talk about this. We are all very curious about what you're up to. So from airplane people to airplane people, we would love to have you on the VIP seat so we could talk about your plans. That way you can tell all of the juicy inside details as much as you can, and maybe a few things that you can't. And we would love to, that's what we're here for, is the hot takes.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking of hot takes, time to go to our Mile High Madness segment. And this week, I guess I'll kick this off because I actually sent this to Preston last week because I couldn't believe how egregious and horrible it was. There are good employers in the industry, and then there are these kind of employers. Let me just read to the audience the post for a helicopter tour pilot somewhere in, Seaside, Oregon. They were looking for 1 to 2 pilots that could join for the upcoming season, specializing in tours, power line, what have you. Ideal pilot has a great attitude, shows up every day with a smile on their face, ready to provide exceptional tours. But they only pay $150 to $200 a day. The shifts are 10 to 12 hours. The schedule is Monday through Sunday, holidays, and every weekend. And it's a 1099 job. So you don't get benefits or anything else. What in the actual, who is going to apply for this job? This is a horrible job. It's below minimum wage, way below minimum wage. And I don't even think it's legal actually to post this.
Yeah. I mean, there's an egregious amount of problems here. Sunday through Monday, or what is it? Monday through Sunday. So every day, right? Every day. Why even put that? Just say, we expect you to be working every day for $200 a day. Do you get snacks? Do they feed you lunch? Because if they don't feed you lunch, it's $180 a day, but you're in Oregon, so it's really $160 a day. You're working 10 to 12 hours.
Plus office duties.
It's and we're not going to pay you extra for that, by the way. So not only do we have duty day problems, we also have qualification problems, because the problem is you're not getting the cream of the crop staff for paying this type of wage. You're not getting ex-fighter pilots or things like that. You're getting time builder kids who don't have, I think did it have an hour requirement? I think it had one, and it was like pretty
500
comical as well.
total.
Yeah, 500 total time hours. Okay, like you're talking about just coming out of student, because you're only going to get the 500 to the 550 hour people that are trying to build time and get somewhere else. I also love how these operators that are doing these tours are like, oh yeah, power line work, which is a hyper specialized skill, by the way.
Yeah, exactly what we want a 500-hour pilot doing, just going right to wires. This is great.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you've ever watched, like if you have some downtime, go on YouTube and watch these guys. It is insane watching these people do work on power lines and helicopters. You know me, not the resident helicopter guy, and it freaks me out terribly. Like,
Crazy.
in what world? It's dangerous jobs to a T. It's crazy.
Yeah, and also just like this is why I just tell people do not for in most cases, and again, the CEO of Robinson's probably going to get mad at me again, but I'm sorry, a lot of the R44 tours, this is who's being hired to fly those things. So maybe it's not the machine, but I just don't have a lot of faith in the R44 tour operations that don't have a 135 certificate, fly single pilot, because this is the kind of stuff that those crew members are going through, and it's incredibly dangerous, and I think it needs to stop. And I'm putting these people out on blast in public because I think it's wrong.
Yep. And we talked about kind of obscuring the name, but we're not going to. We call people out because this is the VIP seat. And that's why you come here, is because you know that we're going to call out the craziness of our industry when it's, going crazy. Speaking of craziness in our industry, so mine comes from X, of course. And I came across this post, and I usually don't comment on publicly traded stocks because it's just weird. It's not really my lane to like give investment advice, and this is not investment advice. But this account, and I have no idea who this is, holds more than 1 million shares of Wheels Up and basically says, I'm confident it will surpass $20 by the end of 2026. It's at 67 cents. Here's the problem. Is the entire argument is based on the World Cup. So I did this big comment and basically said, look, Wheels Up is going through a transition. It's moving from what was considered a lifestyle brand and expanding the addressable market of private aviation, which was the beauty of the promise at the time. And I think what made Wheels Up really special, to a Delta Synergy corporate focused charter operator, which is great. Like, it's a totally fine strategy, but they're in the middle of this transition. And so I said, look, they're climbing out of a $2 billion net loss since going public. There's a lot of stuff. This guy ends up commenting and basically says, keep in mind the 2026 World Cup, which will see the biggest air traffic in American history. The whole basis on the stock, 25 or 30xing, like not 25 or 30% increase, but like 25 to 30 times higher, is because of the World Cup, and people are going to have to fly between these venues. He then goes on to say that he accidentally says 300 million people are going to be coming for Wheels Up. 390 million people. I was like, that's more than the population of the United States. Like, no.
And
he
they
said,
can't
oh, sorry.
afford to fly private, bud.
Right. I had an extra zero in the previous tweet. I think approximately 40 million people will visit America. And I'm like, even then, you're talking about the 1% of the 1%. Like, these types of arguments are just so crazy to me, because you're calling on the base of a stock, and George Mattson is doing a fine job coming in and turning around the Wheels Up operation and transitioning it from the King Air operator that's going to make more people able to fly private into Phenom 300 and Challenger 300 operator that, shows up on time and kind of blocking and tackling standard operations, which is fine. It's just a completely different business strategy than what they started out as. To say that, like, to make stock claims like that, to try and basically pump your bag, because the guy's got 1 million shares and he's probably got them at $2 a share, and he's sitting on a loser trying to get people to buy it. Like, I don't know. I can't with these types of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of this out there. And I was even writing on like Seeking Alpha for a while, but I was writing on it because I actually had some like industry insights and could share things. And especially with, some of the bad actors out there, I was trying to like call people out a little bit. But no, I think he's given it away with what he owns, and just the theory there is not very rational. I think the World Cup's going to be awesome for the private jet industry for sure. We're going to be very, very busy, but I wouldn't expect it to make a that big of an impact on stock price. But again, I don't hold any shares and I don't guess what their price is going to be in the future. So not financial advice. Today's episode of the VIP Seat is brought to you by RealJet. RealJet is built for travelers who want reliability, access, and a real human being on the other end of the phone. Someone who knows you, your preferences, your routines, your styles. With RealJet, you get decades of industry experience, 24/7 access to more than 1,500 premium aircraft, and a flexible, commitment-free booking model. No memberships, no long-term contracts, just a team that anticipates your needs and makes every detail feel effortless, the way private flying should be. With RealJet, you feel the difference from the moment you book. Real people, real trust, RealJet.
So, Jesse, we have heard a lot of crazy perks that are out there. Remember during kind of the tech startup, unlimited PTO and ping pong tables, nap pods is one of my favorites as different employee perks. But what about a ride in an F5 fighter jet? That is what Jared Isaacson has been rolling out at NASA for the top performers, is a ride in his privately owned F5 fighter jet, and he's paying for it out of his own pocket. Look at that, eliminating government waste and inspiring employees. You gotta love it.
Oh, I do love it. I'm actually thinking about maybe applying to NASA now. I want to go in that F5.
No kidding.
What are the
Doesn't take a rocket
qualifications?
scientist, but I would consider becoming a rocket scientist.
There's more jobs, business strategy. I can get in there. But I wonder, it only says exceptional employees. So, what do you have to do to get the F5 ride? Save a lot of money or fire a lot of people? What is it? Let me in.
Or maybe go pick up the astronauts that you stranded in space. That feels like a good benchmark.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Jared, I love that Jared has finally gotten this role. I think he's a fascinating human being. The guy's worth, over $1.5 billion, I think. But he's got this whole, for people who don't know his background, he has this entire private jet fleet that he just owns and operates himself because he's just obsessed with it. So he's got a MiG-29, L-39, Alpha Jet. The guy has all this cool stuff, flies it himself. So it's really fun. And I wonder, why only the L5? Maybe the MiG or something would also be a cool bonus.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, he's got more than 8,000 hours. He's got a T-38. I'd get into T-38. That'd be kind of cool. So Jared Isaacson has had a bit of a rocky past with this administration. He made the error of voting for the other party or donating to the other party at some point in his previous life. And so he got denied the first time and Trump was all mad, but now he's back.
But Elon
got upset.
Loved him.
Right.
Yeah,
Elon loved him. So Elon was upset that he didn't have him. And then Elon got outed. So it's a wild roller coaster with this administration. But Isaacman has been confirmed in December of 2025, a 67-30 Senate vote. So, I mean, I'd say that's, in today's day and age, almost unanimous.
Mm-hmm.
And he has now taken over as the NASA chief. I'm excited to see what he can do because NASA has, let's say, been a little bit behind compared to private industry these days. And so I'm hoping that he can really take NASA into the 21st century and really make a big impact. And I would say this is one. And he's also donating his $221,000 salary to Space Camp in Huntsville. So you remember that one time at Space Camp funded by Jared Isaacson.
It's terrible. No, this is amazing. Look, I love to see more billionaires in charge of government agencies. It's the first time we've ever seen anything like this. Some people are concerned that, maybe there's relationships here that, are not great. But I would hope that someone who genuinely cares about our country and wants to do great things for space will be doing those great things for space. But space travel and space flight is only heating up and getting insane. So NASA has got to come along with the times and figure out what their role is really going to be. Are they going to be the people launching people into space? Maybe not as much anymore, but how do they build a really good regulatory framework and allow people to, create businesses in this industry? It's so cool. I'm so excited to see where we go.
Yeah, no, I am too. Sign me up for like the 20th or 30th trip to space. Like, don't sign me up for the first one. Like, that's not me because you know, see the submarine guy. But you know, I would like for a couple other people to go, and then I am happy to go into space because that would be cool.
So you're not getting into helicopters, but you're going to get in a spaceship. Are you kidding me?
After like 30 or 40 of them, I mean, sure.
Come on.
I don't know. It's cooler. Like helicopters are like kind of cool. Going to space is way cooler.
How dare you? We will move on because I can't with that comment.
Yeah. Well, moving on to another fixed wing issue, Hawker operators have gotten the notice in regards to the stall testing after the NTSB has sounded the alarm after 2 fatal Hawker crashes during these mandatory stall tests. So this is really big for Hawker operators. The NTSB has finally addressed that, yes, this is an issue and it's a known issue. So there was a 900 XP crash in Utah in 2024. And then in 2025, there was an 800 XP crash in Michigan. So both of them were during this mandatory stall test during a return to service. So the NTSB has issued a bulletin and basically said, hey, we need to be very aware when you are doing this of what is going to happen.
Yeah, so I saw a post on this and someone said, oh, we don't need the NTSB babysitting us on operating procedures. And I just wanted to like crawl out of my skin. So there's a lot of things that have happened in this space that have been kind of tribal knowledge for years and years and years. And okay, maybe that's what we had before, but that's not really a good way to communicate safety and to keep people safe. We've had 5 fatalities in less than a year. So yeah, I think it's appropriate for the NTSB to kind of, be saying, yeah, you should do something about this. They specifically called out Textron. They called out the training facilities and the NBAA and said, you need to address this because this is a problem. And what people don't realize is, an airplane goes into maintenance. And when you get that airplane out of maintenance, especially for a busy 135 operator, you want to get that thing back online as soon as possible. The problem is not every pilot is very good at getting aircraft out of maintenance, particularly some types of maintenance like this, when there are potential stall issues and other things that can come up. You need someone who really knows what they're doing. When I was running an operation, I would try to get, the people that were test pilots for Embraer that we had on staff. Those would be our go-to maintenance pilots. But I don't think the industry, and again, this is one of the differences between 135 and 121. We don't have as many of those kind of barriers built into our operations today. But this is a really, really good step for everyone, not just the Hawker operators, to say, make sure your maintenance flight test folks really know what they're doing. Make sure your maintenance team is really communicating with that pilot on what's been done to the aircraft, what the potential failures are going to be. And honestly, this is something that probably needs specialized training at CAE and flight safety, and it's probably not being done today unless you're asking for it and design it. All to say, I think this is really good. It's a shame that it took 5 fatalities for this to happen. I also am going to probably see a lot of lawsuits coming out of this, considering NTSB issued this recommendation and they should have done something about it sooner. But good for NTSB. Let's see how many more of these come out. It is definitely kind of unprecedented in our space.
Yeah, apparently the manuals warn to be prepared for unacceptable stall behavior. Mm-hmm. But then that's it. It's like, that's what's going to happen. And, just be aware of it. In the 2024 crash, which I thought was really interesting, is that it was ice contamination that caused the stick shaker to activate simultaneously with the stall. So normally, this is my understanding, is that the stick shaker is what warns you that a stall is coming and to make a correction. In the 2024 crash, it happened simultaneously with the stall. So that had to do with some of the ice, the way that it was returning to service and things like that. I think that it's another blip on the safety radar. I think that we need to be super proactive. If you're a Hawker operator, this is something that you and your team definitely need to talk about. Basically, the recommendation targets Textron, FAA, and NBAA for action on the 700, 800, 800 XP, 850 XP, and 900 XP. So basically, all the mid-size Hawkers are affected by this.
Yeah, my understanding, I'm not a Hawker pilot, but my understanding from reading everything is that, what happens in standard sim training right now, they're covering approach to stall and basic full stall recovery methods, but they don't cover this like stall test profile, these more complicated stalls that can occur. So that's why they need Textron to create those documents. They need the training facility to administer it, and they need operators to take it seriously and actually do it and not just kind of keep doing what we're doing because we've already had 2 crashes. So let's go ahead and move on.
Yep. Compound this with the windshield problem and the landing gear, the Hawker landing gear stuff. The Hawker is going through the ringer right now. So let's see if we can get that back on track. So into our next story, Monarch Air Group has filed a lawsuit. This is a few weeks old news, but we figured that we needed to cover it here after Blade Urban Air Mobility canceled an ASAP Oregon flight by charging back the credit card. And Monarch Air Group has basically come out and said that Blade Urban Air Mobility has tried to defraud them as an operator. That was specifically in the press release as defrauding them as an operator. And they are suing in the Southern District of Florida.
Yeah, so this originally came to my attention because David Gitman on Monarch, from president of Monarch, he went on to LinkedIn and kind of put this out there in the public. Some of what he said was they had booked an ASAP Oregon flight to Hawaii. Hours before departure, they canceled the flight, never paid the cancellation fee. They had paid the vendor, charged the credit card, and the contract was fully executed. And I've always warned people, especially in the Oregon world, this happens all the time. Cancellation fees are real. 100% cancellation fees can be totally real, especially if you've had to call out what I guess would have to be 2 sets of crew. If you're doing an Oregon flight back and forth to Hawaii, you got to have someone there or another airplane to switch them back and forth. It's probably a very expensive call out.
And you're calling out at 3 a.m.
3 a.m.
Like that was when it was booked.
Right. Yeah. And this happens all the time in the Oregon industry. But the thing that I thought was very, very spicy about David's comments was, why does Blade / Trinity is like the medical group inside of Blade at the time, that's their main business is organ transport, and they are a broker. They don't operate aircraft. So he said, how come they needed Monarch, an intermediary, to book their charters? A, do they lack the technical knowledge? B, do they lack the relationships or volumes for competitive pricing? Or C, have they tried to avoid paying the cancellation fee one too many times and vendors don't want to work with them? Not my words, that's David's, but man, those are strong fighting words there.
Yeah, no kidding. David is not one to mince words on LinkedIn. So if you want something that's entertaining, go check it out. He has made a few other pretty spicy comments here recently. We covered them a couple weeks ago during the prediction show. So if you want to go find that, check out the Mile High Madness section from that, where David had some spicy comments on another broker. But I think that the reality is his point is correct, is that this was intermediary to intermediary. This was not intermediary to broker. And I think that that's the part that really calls out a lot of question marks here, is because in other industries, double brokering is incredibly frowned upon, which is what this is, because Blade holds the contract, which to be clear, this is Trinity. We covered this a couple weeks ago, but for those that don't know, kind of the urban air mobility, eVTOL transportation network, if you will, carved out from the Oregon business. So that happened a couple of months ago. I don't know whether this specific suit happened before or after that. That's something that I don't know, and I should have looked up beforehand. But anyways, it stays the same. It is intermediary to intermediary. So Blade has one price and then Monarch charges them another price, which is a marked up price from the operator. So there's kind of 2 layers of markup for their activities in this. Basically, Blade is selling the contract, which on the surface is not, it's not great, but it's not, it's not illegal to do this, right? It's not. It
seems like a waste of money for the consumer to pay like 2 brokerage fees in between.
Yeah, but I mean, it's probably one of those things where it's like you have a contract and it's 3 a.m. and you need a lung to go from here to there. Like, you're not renegotiating your contract with a new vendor at 3 a.m. You need the organ moved, period. Just move it, get it moved, and we'll figure out what we do on the back end. And Blade probably has some sort of service level agreement that they have to follow. And so they called their competitor. I think that the problem is that if you drop the ball, somehow somebody dropped the ball, and it looks like, according to the suit, it looks like it was probably Blade, allegedly, right? So like, let's be clear. It's allegedly Blade that dropped the ball because they charged it back. I think that the problem is it's an accountability thing. If you have a contract that says 100% cancellation, it's clearly within the cancellation window. Monarch has real cost to that cancellation too. So basically Blade's saying, hey, sorry, that's your that's your hard cost to associate, because an operator doesn't really have hard costs on a cancellation. I mean, maybe you might
If
have
you've already
taken your
paid the
crew
pilot
out,
out,
or
yeah.
but
Or they
not
could have
like,
repoed, prematurely for the flight. I don't know.
yeah, but you're talking fractions of that percentage. It's not like 100%. Monarch has 100% of this cancellation with their operator. They have a contract that they now have to fulfill. So I don't know, if you're in the brokerage world, be super cautious when it comes to these types of transactions, because this is what could happen. Because basically Blade didn't pay, so Monarch charged the credit card that they had on hold, very standard, and then Blade charged it back, and Visa listened to them. So I don't know. It's another case of, I wouldn't say great activity for the brokerage community.
Well, but it takes time and effort to go through the lawsuit. So look, if, and this is a big if David is in the right here, then it's good that he puts this out there in the public record and gets his money back. But if, he was not right, then, we'll obviously come back on here and say like, hey, no, Blade was right in this one. But yeah, unfortunately, just part of the broker business, and just really interesting because it's a publicly traded company. Again, not investment advice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's bring it in for a landing. 2025 was a record year for business jet departures. Over 3.8 million departures, according to data provider WingX. So hooray to all of us. Congratulations. Pop the champagne unless you're driving or it's early in the morning. Make your own choices. But this is exciting for our industry for having a banner year. 3.8 plus million, which broke the record by like 100,000 departures. Like, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, they're comparing this data to 2019, so that's kind of like we all get over the COVID issues, but I mean, compared to 2019, our growth is huge. Interesting.
Well, no, it is a record compared to 2022, which was the previous record. So from a departure standpoint, not only are we up huge over pre-COVID numbers, but in the post-COVID era, 2025 did set a record, which is exciting.
Yeah, I did notice that it started to tick up post-election, which was interesting. So people may be a little more optimistic out there about the economy, and it always tends to follow the economy. The private jet business does. But what's really interesting to me too is how much super mids are starting to really grow. 7% year over year. When you look back to 2019, 57% increase in super mid business, and kind of the same with ultra long range as well. So it's like people want bigger and better jets. Light jets are still the leader globally, still up there, but it's just interesting to see how the consumer shifting is happening.
Yeah, when you compare 2025 to 2019, super mids are up 57% versus light jets at 35%. So super mids are chipping away. 130,000 more departures in light jets. We're going to link this article in the newsletter. If you've ever been a part of Richard from WingX's, one of his, Richard Coe, who's the managing director at WingX, if you ever watched one of his presentations, your brain just kind of melts because there's just so much data there. So we're going to link the newsletter so that you can do your own reading on your own time to see some of this data. But entry-level jets, which I think is classified as like very light jets, it's down kind of year over year. It's probably a jet at Volato holdover. And then biz liners, so like Airbus corporate jets, those are down a little bit. Everything else is up, and it's up bigly.
Yeah, that's huge. So on the other hand, though, on top of the WEX survey coming out, we also had a maintenance survey come out. And to be fair, this is GA. This was TBX. They came out with an end of year 2025 survey. But I think it's really, really insightful for business aviation because it talks about shop costs, labor issues, and those are all the same things happening, whether it's a Cessna 172 or it's a Falcon. Like, those are all things that are driving factors in the industry. Now, they interviewed a lot of shops. 65% of them say that rising part cost and supply chain disruptions are their top challenge, obviously, driven by OEM consolidation, vendor delays, and higher markups. Also, the thing that was really shocking to me is the labor rates. So they're ranging anywhere from now $103 for a really small shop to $150 for larger operations. That's a lot of money per hour. And I think we're going to see $200 hour rates not very far away, as Ken Rickey, one of our gurus of the industry, has already predicted.
Yeah, I think that people oftentimes discount general aviation. If you're in the business aviation world, you're like, oh, it's small. Oh, it's less important. But really, I think that it is speaking to a greater trend inside of the industry, because what you see is you see these small GA mechanics oftentimes move up through the industry. And so if they're not going 121 or 121 world slash, in the commercial 145 world, they're going to be going into these large MROs. I think it also has to do with we've talked a lot about PMA parts. That's a big problem, but I think this shop rate problem is indicative of a larger thing to be concerned about, because labor rates, like that it's a much slower process to get a pool of highly trained individuals into these shops. AI is not coming for these jobs. Like you want to talk about like an AI proof job. I would say airplane A&P is probably way up there with not going to be replaced by computers anytime soon. But the problem is you don't have these kids coming into this program. You've got schools like Auburn and Embry-Riddle and a couple of these other aviation schools that have programs. But if you look at the relationship between pilots and A&P mechanics, like the size of those schools, it's way off. I mean, there's way more pilots than A&P school. I heard on a podcast recently talking about the problem is that we've cut shop class and we've cut all of the coolness of being one of these, mechanics or works with your hands. And I think we're seeing, the long-term trickle effects, because we started doing that in the early 2000s. And here we are 25, 26 years later, and seeing the repercussions of that is huge shortages in labor. You can't hire these people fast enough. And now the rates are expected really high. And so that passing that on to the consumer, it's just, it's a mess. And I think maintenance is kind of I don't want to be doom or gloomer, but it is the pending problem in business aviation that I think not enough people are talking about.
Yeah, and that was even evidenced by NBAA had come out with this little infographic this last week, and it showed how much pilot salaries had increased, how much management team salaries had increased, and how much maintainers had increased. It was a third to half of what those other fields were, which I just find shocking. I mean, I kind of thought the pressure was on from everybody, but it seems like for some reason those wages just didn't move up in the same way that the pilot and management salaries have. So I think it all makes sense, because you go back to the survey and they say 48% have staffing and training issues. Well, 28% have trouble finding skilled technicians. But maybe if they made more money, they would be more attracted to the industry. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to put it out there that everyone needs to raise their salaries, but I think that's one of the reasons we're having a bottleneck, is it's not lucrative or exciting enough yet to be a maintainer.
Yeah, Chamath Palihapitiya on the All In podcast was talking about this. Meta is paying electricians $400,000 to $600,000 per year to work on these data centers. And to the leaders in business aviation who have any sort of reliance on A&P mechanics, that's who you're competing against. That is your talent pool right there, is these kids that say, I'm going to go make 500 grand working for Facebook, going and building data centers and being an electrician. That's the labor pool that you're pulling from. And so therefore that's what you're competing against. So I think maintenance costs are going to continue to go up. I think labor is we had supply chain and we could blame it on COVID for so long. And now I think the inflation might be here to stay until we get PMA parts. Again, I'm going to keep harping on that. Until we get PMA parts, the supply chain thing is not going to be fixed. Labor is going to be the next thing to follow, and is just going to get worse.
Yeah. And I think we all kind of need to, I've seen a lot of complaints about shop cost and how much things are costing and how long they're taking, but I don't think that that's going to change. I think that's only going to increase, and you should start to price that in to your end user, because, there's not a lot of mechanics coming in. And even if they are, they're going to need to be paid more. So it's coming anyway.
Yep. And take a look at, what Ken Ricky's doing vertical integration. Take a look at what Bond's doing, putting it back onto the manufacturer, right? Like there's a lot of different strategies that are going on to try and address this problem. The smaller operators are not going to be able to be as nimble as the big guys and have as much buying power. So I think it's something everybody needs to be very aware of, very cost conscious on, and understanding their business strategy, that you're going to really need to start thinking about maintenance if you're not already. But that's the the big finding. I would say the better of those two surveys is that activity is up. So that's
Sweet
good.
business.
That's good for all of
Activity's
us.
up. Start charging more so we can pay everybody, and then we'll just be clicking away.
Yep, exactly. Well, you know what else is up? Subscribers to the VIP seat. We are growing really fast. We are super glad to have you, the listener, here with us. We want to grow it even more. Jesse and I's big goal for 2026 is to really blow this thing out and to try and make the VIP seat podcast a huge force in the industry. But we need your help. We cannot do this alone. So we need you to share it with your friends, share it with your people in your community, in your business aviation community. Send it to your aviation association email list. That would be a great way. So if you're on the board of one of those, be sure to drop a link. We would love to reach more people in the business aviation industry so that you can be more informed when you go and do your job. So now is the time. The episode's coming to an end. Thanks again to RealJet for sponsoring this week. We really appreciate it. Go to thevipseat.com, sign up for the newsletter, and we will see you all next week.